be an extraordinary program. My dad was Marlon Perkins, for those of you who don't know, and I grew up in zoos. And that was a fun and unusual way to grow up, I think. And in my lifetime, I have watched zoos evolve from being basically cement cages with bars to the wonderful facilities that they are now, where animals concerns are put absolutely number one and their needs are, and you're going to be hearing all about that. And they've also evolved into a powerful voice for conservation and an engaged community for conservation, with so many endangered species here and in their countries of origin. And you'll be hearing about that from Dr. Kelley. So it is my pleasure to introduce two women that I love and admire, Dr. Lisa Kelley and Regina Mossotti.
Thank you, Marguerite. That was such a kind introduction. So as Marguerite said, this is Regina and I'm Lisa, and we are going to sort of take turns talking about our respective areas, animal care and conservation at the zoo. So first, just a little about my background. I like to think that it was born within me to like animals. There's no key moment where I thought, no, I love animals. I just loved animals since earliest time I can remember. Two things, I loved dresses and I loved animals, and it's pretty much stayed the same since then. But even though I knew I loved animals and wanted to be with animals, I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career because I didn't want to be a vet until it was my senior year in college at Washington University, and they had a joint internship with the anthropology department in the primate unit. And this was a brand new internship. It was meant for grad students, but grad students didn't want to cut food and clean cages. I did, loved it so much that the day after I graduated, I started at the Children's Zoo and worked in various departments. So that's me in the 90s in the primate unit. And at that time, the zoo was very engaged in field conservation, that even in the 1990s, and I will talk about that towards the end of the presentation. But our curator lived in the actual building where the keepers were, and we'd have grad students coming back and forth talking about their field work and thought, if animals are so incredible in managed care, what are they like in the wild? So I went to England for a program to have an excuse to study. Those are silky sapots. You will only find them in the far northeast of Madagascar. Completed my master's, and then did a couple jobs working, actually operating a primate sanctuary and working for Easter seals until I could get back into a grad program. This was at WashU, and spent a lot of my 30s studying lemurs, in particular the ring-tailed lemurs. And literally the dissertation was, how do ring-tailed lemurs fare in the poorest area in one of the poorest countries? So that's me in sunglasses, because they lived quite a bit. If they didn't have sacred forests, they were in hedges, cactus hedges that surrounded the crops to theoretically protect the crops. But the lemurs, not only did they have to rely on that food a lot of the time, the puntia, but that was their only place to get shelter, with the exception of some of the sacred forests. So I spent a lot of my time in those tunnels with the ring-tailed lemurs. And there were no other Westerners in the area, so those are the Madagascar National Park wives that I would hang out with. So after I graduated, I did some adjunct teaching in St. Louis until I came across this position called Wildcare Assistant. It was part-time, it was basically administrative, but I knew the players involved with that position and knew they didn't really know what they wanted, and I was gonna make it the position I wanted it to be. And that's what happened. About a year later, it became a full-time assistant director position. And then when my predecessor left, I applied and got the director of the Wildcare Institute. And now I get to oversee all the conservation work under the Wildcare Institute, as well as I'm on leadership positions in our accreditations, which Regina will discuss, called Association of Zoos and Aquariums, as well as the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums.
All right. It's always so hard talking about yourself. I don't love this part.
I thought it was easy.
So I started the same way Lisa did. I knew from a young age that I wanted to work with animals somehow. My dad, if you guys, anybody here been to the zoo, raise your hand. Yeah, good. That's a good answer, good job. How many of you know who Phil is? Raise your hands. Nice, well that's Phil in the upper left-hand corner, so that's me as a little munchkin learning about Phil. But I am a St. Louis and I grew up in St. Louis. And my parents were really good about getting us out into nature and falling in love with everything. They didn't know what they were creating when they took me out to nature all that time. I'm pretty sure they thought I was going to grow up to be a lawyer or something else that made a lot more money than I do. But it worked out because it was the right field for me and very passionate about it. And I took that passion and have been working and studying different animals for a long time, kind of broader approach. I did a study abroad in Kenya, lived there for a short time studying wildlife migrations, living with the Maasai tribes there and trying to figure out how we could grow coexistence, living with animals so that both we and the animals can thrive. And then I went out into the field and realized after getting some of that experience with broader animals that I really loved carnivores. I loved working with wolves and mountain lions and cheetahs and other animals because I saw that they were so misunderstood. And as Marguerite shared, her father is Marlon Perkins, and one of the institutions that he was integral with starting was the Endangered Wolf Center that's close to here, and I was lucky enough to be able to work there as their director of animal care and conservation. I worked out in the field on the Yellowstone Wolf Project. I worked in California with mountain lions, and I loved carnivores. It made such a difference to me to be able to see them on the landscape thriving, because when they're thriving, we are all thriving. They're like the umbrella species that if they're safe and on the landscapes, they're making the ecosystem healthy for everything, including us. And I loved that I was having that impact studying them and being on the landscape with them, but I knew I wanted to reach more people and make a bigger impact in terms of that next step of falling in love with them like I had. And so I moved from the Endangered Wolf Center to the St. Louis Zoo about 3 years ago. I'm very grateful for that experience because now I get 3 million people at my fingertips every year that I can help fall in love with animals. I love speaking about the animals anytime, so thank you all for having us because now we get to talk about our favorite stuff. But the St. Louis Zoo, as Marguerite shared, is just, zoos in general are so important to conservation. They're actually the second leading contributor to conservation in the world. Over $350 million a year from zoos goes towards conservation. I knew I wanted to be part of that, but I wanted to be at an institution that I knew could really make that impact. And the St. Louis Zoo is world class, and so I'm very lucky to be there in the role of Vice President of Animal Care. I'm also very proud, since I'm at the Women's Club, I'm going to say this, I was the first woman to have this role at the St. Louis Zoo. So we're going to tell you a little bit tonight about what we're doing on the campuses that we work with. 3 of the campuses that you have here in St. Louis. One is the Forest Park campus that I think everyone in this room just raised their hand has been to. If you haven't, just let me know. I can get you a free ticket to get in. We also are building the Wildcare Park, which is a safari park in North County, and we're so excited and so proud of this park because it's going to be such a different and unique way to get people to see animals, experience them, and make that connection, create that empathy through seeing the animals and learning about them. That is what helped drive me to what I do, and probably what helped drive Lisa to what she does. And then we have a third property that most people don't even know about. It's called the Sears Lehman Jr. Wildlife Reserve. This was gifted to us, many decades ago by the Lehman family to be able to do conservation work. The Endangered Wolf Center partnered with the St. Louis Zoo to help focus on red wolf conservation, which is near and dear to my heart. I'm the head of the red wolf program nationally, and it's the most endangered wolf in the world, and we now are breeding red wolves on that property in a space that people don't go to, so that they can stay wild, they can learn how to behave like a wild wolf, which are shy and run away from people and are not what you see in Little Red Riding Hood. She lied. And we get to release them back out into the wild, partnering with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So that's a little bit about my background and a little bit about these 3 campuses, but Lisa's going to tell you about our 4th campus.
Yeah, so before I switch the slide, I want to say that the St. Louis Zoo, and Regina was a huge part of this, has created a new vision statement called A World United for Wildlife to Ignite Lasting Change. Now, if that put it more perfectly, lends to the argument that the St. Louis Zoo Wildcare Institute is our 4th campus. I don't know what is, right? So the St. Louis Zoo Wildcare Institute is effectively the zoo's field conservation arm. And that's a very cleaned up map. That is 14 major centers, but we actually have about 30 conservation efforts under that umbrella. I'm not going to talk about all 30 tonight, but I'm going to talk about some really key ones, and then maybe when I get invited back, I'll talk about some others. So first, the Wildcare Institute's field conservation model has what I would think of as 2 distinct qualities that make it different than other zoo conservation departments. And the first is the fact that the Wildcare Institute was founded on a $19 million endowment, by the Zoo Friends Association in 2004. And I thought that that was just so insightful, because what it accomplished was not only did it create a separate funding source so it wouldn't be competing with operating criteria at the zoo, but it also, with endowments, the way they work is it creates this really stable, dependable funding source. And in fact, this endowment's grown to 7 endowments. We have a robust Change for Conservation program, which gives us about $250,000 a year. And that's just frontline teams asking people to donate $1 for conservation, and we get proceeds from the conservation carousel. And when I talk about it being stable and dependable, I think a really excellent example of this is the Sahara Wildlife Recovery Center, one of our centers. So that's Bill Houston. I believe that picture was taken in Kenya years back. He was recently retired general curator, and he was an ungulate specialist. And when the Wildcare Institute started, his passion was to protect ungulates, particularly in the Sahara. And it was, tropical environments always get the notoriety. No one was doing this area. He had a great team of other ungulate specialists, and they thought,
What's an ungulate?
Oh, I'm sorry, hoofstock. So, 4-hooved, antelope and all those creatures. So that's a Dama gazelle. Gazelles there. But he thought, I guess the giraffe also would count. But they thought, well, if no one's working in the Chad, Niger, Western, Northern Africa because it's politically unstable, but the animals in that area are silently going extinct. And part of it was for war tactics, thinking rebels would shoot the animals so that there wasn't available food sources. So something needed to be done. And because of this endowment, a nice sizable amount of that was designated to the Sahara Wildlife Recovery Center and started Sahara Conservation Fund. And so what started as this grassroots organization, 501c3, really grew to be this huge multinational effort. But even better than that is that, so there's 4 major offices in Chad, Niger, and Europe. They have literally taken a species that was declared extinct in the wild, and the IUCN has elevated it to endangered, with over 650 roaming a reserve, the Wadi Rimeh, Wadi Akim Reserve in Chad. Not only is that historic and notable, but it's also being used as a template for other species like the addax, which will be at Wildcare Park. And even more significantly, because this group knew to work so well with the Chad government, Niger, UAE, They literally have this historic management agreement. This is pretty much hot off the press, where they're going to co-manage this reserve to further enable the protection of these species. And that all because of that endowment. And this has received quite notable recognition. And in fact, it's not the only one. There's a similar story with the Grevy's zebras in northern Kenya, whereas both of those have won the AZA's William G. Conway International Award, or accreditation awards for that. So the second aspect that I think is pretty unusual but notable to this conservation success of this, the Wildcare Institute, is the fact that all of the centers have historically been led by zoo staff. Historically, it's been curators, but also conservation directors. Pictured here, that's Michael Masick. He is the executive director of the zoo. Before all his promotions, he was actually a center director for 3 of our conservation efforts. That's him in the Marianas Islands. There's Bob Merz back when he was a zoological manager, working in the buildings with invertebrates. He's out there releasing something called the American Burying Beetle with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Missouri Department of Conservation. They're still doing that. He's now the assistant director. He's still doing that project. One of his U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service partners is miraculously back in the building, so they're actually still doing the great work. And this has led, because of this true fence-to-field dedication with partners, has also led to a lot of notable success. And in fact, just a month ago, through a project in the Marianas Islands, releasing endangered bird species that, I don't know if you know the story of the brown tree snake, but on safe islands, that is won us the award for the AZA North American Conservation Award. And I just want to say what was notable about this is that on Guam, before these translocations happened, there was probably, I think, 9 of the 11 species of birds went extinct. So in fear that this would happen to others, they have been moving them from island to island. There's done 11 of these transoceanic translocations with 5 different species, and all the populations are increasing except with 1 species. So, I mean, and again, that's with the zoo starting with Mike Masick and then Antiver and all the partners. And then I do have to put in a plug that through our partnership, we have close partnerships also with the universities. This is with the University of Missouri in St. Louis. And it's just ironic that picture, Lucia Lohman is also in that picture. But we working with her and the Center for Avian Health, we got international recognition. This is a very coveted award through the World Association of Zoos and Aquarium Conservation Award. We're the only, to date, North American zoo that has gotten the award for this. There's been some aquariums and internationally, and then the St. Louis Zoo got this because of the efforts in the Galapagos. And I will put in a plug, we have, if you're interested in traveling with the zoo to the Galapagos, there's pamphlets downstairs. All right.
Yeah, thank you. So Lisa shared a little bit about what's going out around in the world. I wanted to share with you a little bit what's happening here in St. Louis at the zoo. So as I mentioned, I'm the Vice President of Animal Care. So I take care of all of the different teams that take care of the animals, from our husbandry team, the keepers that you probably have gotten to see when you come out, our veterinary staff, our nutrition staff. And as Marguerite mentioned earlier, zoos have grown and learned so much over the many, many decades that they have been in existence in the US. We're learning constantly and wanting to make sure that we are providing the best possible care for these animals because they're like family to us. We love these animals. And I know that's maybe uncomfortable to say, but it's very true. We love these animals. And so being able to work with these expert staff, we're always trying to grow that. And I wanted to share a little bit, just quick things that we're doing. So you see our incredible penguin team here feeding our animals. They're working with them constantly, checking on them daily to make sure they look good, they're healthy. But we're always trying to figure out ways that we can do that better. And I want to give a quick example of the photo on the left is our sea lion sound team. So that's the team that works with our seals and our sea lions. They were able to build a relationship so good and so caring with our sea lions that they were able to get them to pose and open their mouth to be able to do x-rays. So they stand and they get to participate in their own healthcare, which is so cool. And what's amazing about this scene, this is one of the first times it ever happened. This is a photo from a magazine for AZA that we were able to share this training and how we did it with other zoos across the country. So not only are we doing it, we're making sure other zoos lifting them up as well. And she did have a bad tooth. So she had to have a dental, which none of us love going to the dentist. She didn't either. But we were able to pull it before it became dangerous, right? Just like our own teeth, they can get infected, they can make them really sick, they don't want to eat. And we were able to take care of her, make sure she got back on her way. To the right is a photo recently with me with a spider monkey. This is a little bit of a sadder story, but I'm also really proud of the zoo for stepping in and being able to help. I don't know if you've gotten to see the news articles that came out about 2 months ago, but we partnered with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to help them find a home for 4 spider monkeys that were confiscated by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that were illegally crossing the border. So what that means is there were folks that were going into the wild areas, and they were actually killing the mothers and stealing the babies and trafficking them across the border to sell them as pets. And this is a big issue, the illegal pet trade for birds, for reptiles, for a lot of different mammals like spider monkeys is prevalent, and it's really degrading the animals that Lisa and her team are trying to save in the wild. And what's sad about this is you couldn't put them back into the wild because they had been raised by humans, they didn't know anything else, and so now they're very habituated, they don't know how to find food on their own, etc. So they needed to find a forever home. So the St. Louis Zoo stepped up and said we would give a home to these babies. We had a geriatric, an older female spider monkey who has basically become their grandma, which has been amazing to watch. She's literally taken them under her wing and plays with them. And actually, I think they've made her younger because she's now doing like moves and like using her tail because they use their tail to swing, and she's doing stuff that she hasn't done in a while. So I think she's really like trying to teach them how to be a spider monkey. So if you come visit the primate house, you can meet these 4 cuties, and you guys can help be a voice now for them of don't go to a pet shop and buy an animal that doesn't seem right. Dogs and cats, good, right? Monkeys, bad. Don't do that. Our animal health team, our veterinary team, our vet techs, and our quarantine staff, they are the team that is not only charged with making sure that all the animals that come into the zoo are healthy, but all of the over 12,000 animals that we have at the zoo are healthy. Our incredible team is experts in the field. They are constantly getting trained, making sure they are up to date on all the newest things that they're learning, but also they are the teachers and sharing the things that they're learning and helping to elevate, just like our animal keeper team is. For example, in the photo on the right, our vet tech worked with our keepers to train our cheetahs to come up to the fence, and they can stick out their tail and get a blood draw. So they can evaluate their blood to see how healthy they are without the animals ever having to leave their homes, without having to sedate them, which can be dangerous. And the cheetah's getting treats the whole time, so she's happy with it, so which is great. And what's amazing about it is we can also tell when they're pregnant now by doing that. And as if you've heard, we just had cheetah babies, and they are out exploring their habitat now, all 5 of them, from our female mother named Cora, which is my daughter's name, and I didn't name her after her. She came with that name, but my daughter is sure that the cheetah is named after her. I don't have the heart to tell her she came in with that name. One of the most exciting things that we're working on, but it's also a heartbreaking thing, is the EEHV situation with African and Asian elephants. This disease, it's a virus that actually essentially causes the animals to bleed from the inside. It's a very serious virus, and we've had a lot of fatalities from it, and it's something that's happening in the wild as well. And so the animals that are in human care in zoos across the country, we're trying to figure out how can we stop this virus, learn about it here, develop a vaccine so that we can help stop it in the wild, so we can save these babies. Because it's more the young are the most prone to it, unfortunately. And this is a picture of Avi to the left, who is a baby elephant that was born at the St. Louis Zoo who did have it, and he unfortunately passed away. So we've been working diligently with our veterinary health team and our animal care team to learn more about it and partnered with other zoos across the country. That's the coolest part, is it's not just on us. We're stronger together, and if we can bring in others, we'll learn more. I'm really excited to share that a vaccine has been developed, and it's working. And how many of you heard of Baby Jet? Okay, good. If you haven't seen him yet, he's adorable. He's a handful. I feel bad for Mom all the time, but he's amazing. Climbing everything. He's an elephant who thinks he's a monkey. But he's going to get one of these vaccines in the next few months. So we're really proud of that. He's going to be one of the first elephants to be able to get it. We've tested on a few elephants in other zoos in some areas, and we know it's working really well. So now that he's born, he gets to have this, which if he had been born a few years ago, it wouldn't have been an option. So I'm really proud of the zoo for that effort. I also manage the animal nutrition team. So these are the guys who make sure that every animal eats extremely well. To be honest, they eat better than we do. All the time I see the salads and the beautiful fruit and all the things they're eating. I'm like, I need to, you guys should be an inspiration to me as I'm eating my donut. But this team is incredible, and they're always working to find new ways to provide the best food for our animals. And one of the things I'm really proud of is how they've brought our community into that effort. So we feed our animals browse. What browse means is it's literally, if you think of giraffe, they're eating off of trees, that's browse. So we now have studied local native trees that actually provide really good food and nutrition and vitamins and all that stuff that a lot of our animals, from gorillas to giraffe to the addax that Lisa mentioned earlier, can eat. Well, it's hard to harvest all of that. So we've brought in Ameren, because they're cutting trees all the time, and those trees are going to waste. So why have them go to waste when they can feed our animals and provide that good care? And now all of those line workers and all the folks at Ameren are part of caring for the animals. And it's creating that connection in a unique way. They feel like they're caring for them. We also worked with Bellefontaine Cemetery. They had a plot of land that they weren't using. We were able to plant specific types of trees that we can now harvest from. So just an example of how we're always bringing our community in. As Lisa talked about, that vision of united for wildlife, that's not just our teams or our campuses, it's our community, it's worldwide, and this is a really cool example of how our nutrition team is thinking outside the box of how to bring others in. As Lisa mentioned, we are part of AZA, Association of Zoos and Aquariums. That's a lot of letters, but basically what it means is that we have extremely high standards of care. Of the thousands of institutions, from roadside zoos to aquariums to zoos that are across the country, there are thousands. Only 250 of them meet this high standard. And we are really proud of St. Louis Zoo. We have been part of AZA and have met this standard for decades now. Every 5 years, we get reaccredited. And what that means is a 5-day intense inspection and about a year of putting an application together that goes over every possible part of our zoo, our financial security, how we take care of our staff, how we take care of the animals. Obviously, there's a lot in there about the animal side of things. How we make sure our zoo is safe, our guests and our animals, from a security team. All sorts of aspects, everything you can think of, they go through every part of it. So it's intense, and we just last month got our reaccreditation for another 5 years, which we're really proud of. Thank you, because I think the process takes like 10 years off my life, and so we're very proud of it. And the last thing before I hand it over, well, I have one more thing before that, but before I hand it over to Lisa, we have 2 new projects that I could do a whole nother talk about them, but I'm really excited about. One is Destination Discovery, which is where the Children's Zoo was in the St. Louis Zoo Forest Park campus. This is essentially our new Children's Zoo. But it's why our Children's Zoo is amazing. And I grew up in the original, and I had my kids growing up in the second version of it. This is our 3rd version of it. And what we wanted to create was something that all children, because we all have kids, we're all kids at heart, can be a part of. We wanted families to be able to participate. We didn't want just kids to go off and learn and play. We wanted the families to be able to do it with them. And the reason for that is because that's what we heard of from our community. We actually brought them into the process of, what do you want to see in this space? It's going to be incredible. There's going to be so many different features, from feeding flamingos to, you can see the picture on the left where the otters are sliding over you, in our new otter habitat, and having fun going back and forth, and a whole bunch of other things that really, again, bring the kiddos into learning about wildlife and creating that connection, that empathy. That was our big driver for this, is how do we connect with kids? And our age range from this was about walking to about 8 to 10 years old. Because all the research shows that that's when you make the biggest impact on making that connection and understanding that we're part of nature, that we are the stewards of it and can help protect it and live with it. That possum in your backyard, I know, can be scary at times, but they're really important. They actually help keep diseases from getting to us, right? So learning those important things helps you see the world in a different light, and that's what Destination Discovery is going to do. And then Wildcare Park that I mentioned earlier, it's a safari park where you get to get out into nature and feel like you're in Africa or the plains of Asia and see these animals up close. But again, we brought the community into what they wanted in this. And so we've got a museum in there also that you can visit that is going to be more on the teenager end of learning. So we've got continuous learning throughout your life. So we can learn at Destination Discovery, and then they can come to Wildcare Park and find things that speak to teenagers. Because as the mom of a teenager, you have to talk to them very differently and very carefully so that you don't make them mad. But we know that they like technology, okay? So how can we incorporate technology in a healthy way but that makes that connection? We had teenagers that said they were kind of afraid of some animals. Okay, well, how can we help you learn about them in a different way? They said, well, maybe VR so we can see them without feeling like we're in danger, and that can be that bridge to helping us learn about them and fall in love with them. So we're excited about those two things. You guys all have to come out and visit because we're super proud of them. So, and lastly, from Animal Care, we are doing things at the Forest Park campus and at Sears and soon to be at Wildcare Park that we're actually breeding animals and releasing them back out into the wild. Lisa talked about a few, but I'm proud of this program because a lot of people don't know about it. But from the American red wolf to the hellbender right here in Missouri, this is one of our animals, to the Partula snail all the way in Tahiti. We're doing things around the world, but you get to see it at St. Louis before it goes off and learn about it. And I don't know how they do the releases in Tahiti, but I have volunteered multiple times to go on that trip. and Lisa's never let me go, and I just feel
I've never gotten to go.
Oh, she's over here. Okay, well.
Details.
Right, details. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to talk a little bit about a special program that we're working on.
Yeah, so Marguerite asked what we're excited about going afield. So buckle up because this is one I'm very excited about, and it's a little circuitous because in order to talk about what I'm excited for in the future, I'm going to have to talk about what excited me from the past. And this is Madagascar. And I alluded to the fact back in the day when I was in the primate unit how their field conservation was already happening, but I didn't say what it was. And it was a study, a truly crazy study, where black and white rough lemurs, so you see those in zoos, they are actually being depleted in the wild. They're critically endangered. And they too, like Regina said with the spider monkeys, have been taken as pets. And one of the issues with, and this is in Madagascar, they're used for hotels, good-meaning people wanting to get more tourists in. And one of the well-meaning things of the ministry was they were going to be harder about that, which then led to a lot of unhomed, confiscated black and white rough lemurs. And so this is the 90s, and this is under the Madagascar Fauna and Flora group, of which the St. Louis Zoo and the Missouri Botanical Garden, as well as some others, have been members of since 1988. So this is something going way back, starting its origins way back in time. So this is Betumpoon, of which the St. Louis Zoo, under the Madagascar Fauna and Flora group, has been managing the research of since the 1980s. But more significantly, this is Madagascar's oldest protected area, 1927. And why that is significant is that unlike other reserves, communities, generations of communities have grown up with this reserve. So there's no feeling of missing out. It's felt as part of their community. It really is the perfect place. That's an actual picture of Betumpoon. It's the incredible diversity. It has 11 lemur species despite its small size. Those three pictured are critically endangered. The only one you probably recognize is the black and white rough lemur, because the other two aren't in zoos, and I will talk about one of those in a moment. Has 76 frog species. Through our Wildcare Institute grant program, there's been, I believe it was 19 discovered through that program and 36 in total. And the incredible flora diversity, I'm sure Robbie could talk to, and members of the Missouri Botanical Garden. So it really is the perfect place. So we had this thinking that, okay, you have this beautiful protected area and you have lemurs that need to go somewhere. And then the one problem with it, you see Betumpoon on this map here, it's a fragment. And that's been a fragment since the 1920s. That it's one major problem. I mean, even the green, so the green, that's primary lemur habitat. And in fact, we were just talking in a meeting today, trying to get a corridor from Betumpoon to that main strip of land, the science isn't there yet. That's an impossibility. The only thing to do is to move around lemurs. And lemurs are all arboreal, so they can't cross to those other forests. They're stuck in that patch. So going back to the 1990s, this crazy effort, they thought, well, we're just gonna put lemurs in there. We're gonna take those pets, we're gonna take pets, animals from the zoo, and we're gonna bring them to North Carolina and put them on this island and do boot camp. And lemurs who knew how to be lemurs and seemed to be physically fit enough to do so were selected, and they were literally put on a Boeing 737, and this is 13 of them, and this is, you see the years from 1997 to 2001. I was a keeper at this time, so I'm seeing all this action taking place, and I'm thinking, this is really crazy, but this is exciting if we could make this happen. So not only do they fly all the way to Madagascar, which is a day-and-a-half trip in and of itself, but Betumpoon has been there for a reason, because it's so hard to get to. So then they had to hike up this high hill, and then they had a soft release pen, and they got them acclimated to their new habitat, and did some supplemental feedings, and then thought, okay, we're gonna release them, they're gonna find wild lemurs, and produce babies, and all's gonna be good with this world. Sounds crazy, right? And it was. In fact, when they did the program, one of the main reasons why they stopped in 2001 is that they didn't foresee, so that's a fossa, that's the largest carnivore in Madagascar. It's actually closely related to a mongoose. They're technically vulnerable, but endangered in their own right. And they were basically finding these fluffy little things as easy lunch targets. And in fact, some not so jokingly called it the lemur lunch, or the fossa lunch program. So they discontinued it for that reason, and they did see some individuals going off and being with wild individuals and having babies. But unfortunately, they didn't, it was thought of as kind of a failure, and they didn't really follow up with the genetics like they probably should have in the monitoring. And this is the 90s, so genetics wasn't as well advanced. So we thought that's the end of the story. So fast forward, and so what we're excited about now, or we're less excited but thought of as a necessity, there's a second critically endangered species that's up there, that beautiful orange and white animal called the diademus of Fock. You will never see those in zoos, and they are critically endangered, and they are doing also very poorly in Betumpoon because it's inbreeding, but again, perfect habitat. And places nearby, because of mining, they are being displaced. So they had to do the Madagascar Fauna and Flora group thinking, why not take these lemurs that are gonna die or at high risk of dying because of mining and putting them in Betumpoon? And for good reason, Madagascar National Parks, it turns out also the fossa like them as well. Madagascar National Park said, well, how do you know it's inbreeding? How do you know that's what's going on? So there was a genetics test done, and this was through some colleagues at Washington University, and did what I would have thought would have been a very easy answer. And they checked the genetic diversity of the black and white rough lemur, the lower picture, and the diademus of Fock, and they compared the genetic diversity in the tiny fragment of Betumpoon with the larger corridors. And the results, as you would expect, the diademus of Fock, a lot less genetic diversity in Betumpoon. and much more so in the corridor. So they're thought of as they're pretty inbred, right? They just don't have mates. But what they found out with the black and white rough lemur is that not only was there more genetic diversity in Betumhun than in the corridor, but in any of the control areas of any other site where black and white rough lemurs are. So, while some scientists will say you got to now test for that, everybody who is part of the project and renowned scientists are saying it had to be the restocking program. So it literally has created this healthy population in Betumhun and has gotten us all motivated and all excited and has reinvigorated our thoughts about the Diadema sifat. And in fact, what we have decided, and by we, I mean key members of Madagascar Fauna and Flora Group, Washington University, we have members of Missouri Botanical Garden, University of Turin, University of Urbana-Champaign, multiple NGOs in Madagascar. We are all excited and we're gonna do this meta-population analysis. So the Diadema sifat, that's their entire range in pink. So it's large, but it's certainly doable. And we have been securing funds. We just had 2 meetings about it today. We're gonna do it again Thursday. And we're gonna first accumulate as much information as we could get to do something called the population viability analysis, because we've had so many people work on it, but independently. And then we're gonna all meet in Madagascar and start a plan. And the Malagasy are so excited. I don't know if you've heard the news, but they're undergoing a coup. This is a beloved species. It's only in Madagascar. It's not anywhere in zoos. And the thought is, literally calling it the Save a Species Project, and we just need this win. And we're gonna do it, and we just know it. All of us I've not seen so much energy, and it's been ongoing. So that's what I am most excited about. And I'll bring it to Regina.
Yeah. Well, we just wanted to end. We wanted to share our reason for coming here and a big reason of why you can feel the passion in Lisa's voice of like, we're making a difference. How exciting is that? That's what you dream of being able to do, and being able to work with the St. Louis Zoo, we get to do that. And all of our folks that donate and support us, that are part of our teams, that are voices for the animals, they're all part of making a difference, and it's vital. It's vital to us making the world a healthier place. And as moms at the Women's Club, we felt like we should share this. I mean, a big part of why we do what we do is so that our kids can have a better world. Yeah. Where there is the sifat still there that you can see and learn about and hear about. And it's every day we're so grateful that we work at the zoo and honored that we were able to come and share our story with this amazing group today. So thank you so much for having us, and Marguerite and the Women's Club for inviting us here. And we'll take any questions if you have any. Oh, I see one already. Wow. Yes. Who is Phil? I'm so sorry. So many people raised their hand. Phil was a gorilla that lived at the zoo in the 1930s, 40s, a long time ago. And he was taxidermied so that his legacy could live on, and people could talk about Phil and learn about gorillas and be up close with them. And he's kind of become like a legend. So we have a lot of folks who are like, I remember when Phil was around and I saw Phil, and it's like, well, but that was like the 30s. But what they saw was taxidermy Phil, and he used to be in different places in the zoo. And at one point he was in the Living World in one of our museums that was there. And he is now in our education center where our kiddos are. So they still get to see Phil, the gorilla, who is famous in St. Louis. So. I thought it was your dad. My dad is Jack, not Phil. Yes.
How did the animals do on May 16th with the tornado?
Yes, the question was, how did the animals do during the tornado? They did better than we did. That was a pretty intense day. I never thought I would live through a tornado, let alone live through one at a zoo. Our animal care staff, I got to share, that honestly should have been a slide that I shared. When I talk about the incredible care that they have and the relationships that they build, they're constantly thinking about how they can make sure the animals are safe, our guests are safe. And one of the things that they trained our animals to do is called an emergency recall. So the animals practice this and learn that when they hear a specific sound, which is different than their normal training sounds and cues, that they know a really special surprise is on the other end. So like our jaguar, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna get like 10 rabbits. This is amazing, I'm so excited. And so when they hear that sound, they come running inside. And so our staff, when the sirens went off, they enacted that. Even though how many of us have lived through a million tornado sirens, we're like, sure, it's another one. Maybe I'll go downstairs, but let me like get my drink first and then I'll go downstairs. This was real. Our keepers don't mess around. So they brought all the animals in. And because of their quick thinking, and we had seconds. It was very, very fast when the sirens went off to the change. We saved many, many animals from getting killed, injured, or escaping. We had trees that were down in habitats that broke fence lines, that could have been an escape route. And I'm really, really proud of our teams for being able to do that. So they are all safe, they are all fine, and it's why we do what we do. So thank you for asking. It was a really tough day. We lost hundreds of trees just in the zoo alone, and tons within Forest Park. It was an extensive amount of damage that our team, that AZA inspection that I talked about, it was a month later. So we have been working on, we're always AZA ready. We always want to be our best, but we, of course, put even extra energy into the inspection. We've been working on it for like a year, and almost all of it was undone with the hurricane. And our team, I don't know how they did it. It was superhuman, but they fixed as much as they could and got us back. Our inspectors, to looking great, our inspectors were like, oh wait, so the hurricane, or the tornado wasn't that bad. We're like, no, our team is just that awesome. And we showed them photos and they were just blown away that our staff could get the facility looking the way it did. But one of our big drivers is we wanted to get the zoo back and open for our community that was hurting. We wanted them to have a place that they could come to and just be away from the damage that was where their homes were. And we lost family, St. Louisans, five family members in St. Louis that year, or that day, and we just wanted to be open for the community. So our team stepped up and
You also saved people that were there.
Yes, we did. I'm sorry, I'm the vice president of animal care, so I wasn't that. Yes, we did. We had no human injuries, and obviously no fatalities. And again, same with our, thank you, Marguerite. If our safety officer was here, she'd be like, oh, okay, Regina, there's more than animals. But we got all of our guests inside. All of them were safe. We had a few that were like, no, I'm fine, that we couldn't force to come in. And then as soon as the wind blew, they're like, oh, this is real. And they came in, and we have safety protocols to make sure our guests stay safe at all times. We brought them into those areas and we talked to them. We talked to them about animals. We had some that were really scared because you could hear it outside. You literally could hear the trees falling on the buildings and stuff. And so we got the kids' minds off it. We talked about lemurs and all the cool animals are at the zoo, and they went back outside thinking, oh, it couldn't be that bad. And when they saw the damage, they were very grateful that we had those safety protocols in place.
You guys are awesome. Any more questions? One more question?
Yeah.
Is the Discovery Center open?
Sorry, the Discovery Center is opening next summer in 2026, and Wildcare Park is opening in 2027.
Honey, we'd like you to take a picture of us.
Oh.
All up here together. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce, well, let me get in between you girls.
Yes, sir.
There are quite a few members of the St. Louis chapter of the, hold on. You look gorgeous. Thank you, Connie. Of the Explorers Club chapter in St. Louis. And if you want to know what that is, you can ask any of the people who are about to stand up. Our chairman, Dr. Robbie Hart, is here, and there are quite a few other members of the Explorers Club. So we're so delighted that you've come to share this program with us, and we are going to be privileged to share a program with them next May, when Dr. Lucia Lohman is coming at the behest of Dr. Hart, who works at the Missouri Botanical Garden. And so they're going to have their annual meeting here, and we get to also attend the program and have whatever the delicious dinner is. So I want to give each of you a book that is the history of the first 100 years of our beloved club, the St. Louis Women's Club, that my mother belonged to. And when I moved back to St. Louis after 25 years away, she made me join it, and I love it. So, welcome. I'm just so glad to see so many neighbors here, and I know there's a delicious dinner waiting for us downstairs. So let's go.
All right, thank you.